There I am.
Oh, now
I'm a
I
little
see you.
I'm a little small on my screen.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm up here at the top and you're a big screen down below me. I don't know.
Oh, if you move the mouse, there's a setting. It'll be gallery view or
Gal
speaker view.
There we go. There we go. There we go. All
So
right.
this is now we're side by side.
All right, perfect.
So I don't know what we're going to go by your name on the Discord, or we're going to go by your real name.
Well, you can call me Scott. I usually introduce myself as Scott when I'm doing my own podcast, but everyone on the Akira Discord knows me as Rugmo, so I keep the old name around.
Well, Scott, let's
Uh,
let's start by why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
well, um, I'm not really a religious person. Never have had Christianity in my history at all. But it was really Jordan Peterson that got me to really consider what religion actually means and all of this and all of that
Yeah.
and these different terminologies. And one of the major thing one of the major things that I've been thinking about recently is how Jordan Peterson is really obsessed about like certain little parts of the Bible, like the story of Cain and Abel. Like you and I both know he'll go on for hours about just a few little lines. So I thought that, maybe I could do the same thing with an outsider perspective on the Tower of Babel. So I've been really thinking about the meaning crisis with John Vervaeke and all that. And I really think that what it comes down to is that when we're trying to have these conversations with each other, we're actually speaking different languages with each other. Like it doesn't have to be the difference between English and French for it to be, somehow our languages have been confounded. So that's the main theme that I want to work with on this conversation.
Well, I think that is very true. And over the last couple of years, one of the big realizations that I have had is it's amazing language works at all. Because you are very right in that point that
Yeah.
we mean different things by the words that we use. We are pushing agendas, so that's the sloshy aspect, the fudgy aspect. We are subtly pushing different agendas with the words that we use, and we are barely communicating, even if we're both speaking English, even if we're both more or less within the same cultural bubble.
Hmm.
And if anybody wants to get an example of this, get married.
Yeah, no kidding. Try to just have a conversation with anybody. It doesn't have to be someone you live with, just like your best friends who you think you know pretty well. You ask them, "Eh, do you believe in God?" And their answer is, well, not the Christian God as far as I can tell, but
Yeah,
how do you get the conversation going from there when we can't even agree on what the word believe means?
yeah.
I mean, your work here on YouTube with that series, The Words That Fudge, has been like that's the book you need to write, Paul. That's what we need. That's the knowledge that this world is hungering for.
Okay.
Because if we can't understand the basic words that we're using with each other, then how do we have a conversation when you say I believe in God? I think that means, well, I think that this deity literally exists and is watching over us, but like you talk a lot about how no, that's just what I trust in. God is what I trust, not it's not quite exactly the same thing as if you say, do you believe in evolution? Like we've seen from Stephen Woodford talking to Jonathan Pajot. Well, we're evolved primates, right? Well, I wouldn't say that's my first example, but well, then I can't talk to you at all. This is just another one of those wacky Christians that I just can't reach. And when he said that, it really really bothered me because I'm
Hmm.
like, if you want to give up on this conversation just because you need to do a little bit more work on translation, then I don't know where the next step is.
Wow. Wow. That's really. quite profound, because I think in a nutshell, you just sort of laid out the great, if there's something about our current age in terms of the relational dynamics we have with each other, it's right there. And the great, I'm trying to remember how David Brooks phrased it in a New York Times piece, and I'm not remembering it accurately, but it's basically the great it's basically the great age of walking away, because there's a certain blindness we have to our own speech. We don't listen to ourselves. And so when he says, we're evolved apes, you might say, well, please tell me about the orangutan that pushed you through its birth canal. So, no, that's not what I mean. Then what exactly are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Were you nursed by a chimpanzee? And we don't understand. I mean, this is a group of people that wants to complain about literalism. Please tell me the literalism that you're manifesting with this language game. Because unless some orangutan pushed you into this world through its birth canal, this evolved primate thing is about as abstract as anything you're going to find in the Bible. But we don't see it that way. And that was Peugeot's point. But Stephen couldn't see it. And the advantage that Peugeot has is that he's been living in a majority materialist culture. And, I know I get in trouble with half of my audience when I talk about that I'm not a skeptic about white privilege, because the underclass always knows the language of the overclass better than the other way around. Because in order to make your way in this world, you need to be able to translate into the dominant frame just in order to relate to people. But those who are very deeply ensconced in the dominant frame don't need to learn the other skill, because they don't need it. It's basically like in America, if you know English, you're just fine. If you come here speaking Spanish, you'd better learn English. But then English and Spanish, and the English speakers don't know Spanish. And that's what's happening in terms of language games all over the place right now.
Yeah, I have so much admiration for anybody who actually has the ability to speak two languages. And we can extract upon that too. Like, it doesn't have to be Spanish and English or French and English. It could be like speaking in mythological language, or speaking in religious language, or in scientific language. It does. The language barriers that we have today aren't just built on national borders anymore. They're more like separated by ideology than anything else.
Yeah.
And you see that with the woke crowd, and James Lindsay talking about, this is the new religion, and they're all, speaking like they do on Rick and Morty. Like, us millennials have our own language. I'll admit that right now. Like, I saw you in a video once recently where you said the word literally should probably go away. I'm like, fair enough. We overuse that too much. That's my generation. That's I'll take that criticism very much.
The men do. The word that the women overuse too much? Amazing.
Amazing.
Amazing. Sometimes I hear that word, it's like, that word's got to go. You're wearing it out. We're going to need a better word for it pretty soon, because amazing will be dead.
Yeah, amazing. we had a similar conversation on my own podcast on Bookwave, and the response of one of my buddies was, yeah, totally. Like, there's another one. Like, totality. It doesn't, like, totally doesn't mean the totality of something anymore. It means, oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
The way we speak to each other, like, it's easy to see how all of these holes are found. And you don't need God to come down to confound our languages for us to stop understanding everything that we're trying to say to each other.
Right.
And what it really comes down to, as far as I've figured out, is patience, empathy, and emotional control. And if you don't have those three things, then you can't have a conversation across the aisle.
Wow. That's good. That's really good. Now, you've colonized this thing pretty good so far, but I don't know much about you yet. So, in order for me to
I
understand you,
kind of jumped ahead a little bit.
you did, you did.
Yeah. My mind
So
goes
you
too
have your
fast.
Bookwave podcast, and I know
Right.
I haven't watched it, but you've sent that to me a couple times,
Mhm.
and but so part of this business about not being able to speak with one another is that, what Peugeot kept saying to to rationality rules, which he did not understand at all, which was, I need to know where you are. Now, of course, that's, well, I'm sitting here in, no, the UK. No, that's not where you are. There's a very there's a very deep sense of where that is not geography, it's cultural. So I need to have some sense of where you are, Scott. So why don't you tell
Okay.
me where you are?
Well, like I mentioned before briefly, I didn't really have anybody overtly religious in my childhood except for a couple of grandmothers
Okay.
who was like, you know, they're old, they're religious, that's fine, but the newer generation. I actually remember the first time I was comfortable with the label of atheist was when one of my grandmothers tried to convince me that Noah's flood was a thing that actually happened and that was an historical event. So I'm like, I was it was the kind of situation that Jordan Peterson makes fun of, like, the smart 13-year-old atheist. I was probably even younger than 13 at the time, but I'm like, I go to school, I know my history. I know that's not real. I know how old the planet really is. So, that was kind of where I started drifting away from it. But you know, I definitely wouldn't have been able to tell you this, years back when I was, living this story, but it definitely wasn't enough. So, I had a mental breakdown, I guess you could call it. A toxic relationship ended. That's that's the easiest way to put that. And I found myself listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson videos after seeing the C16 stuff and all of the people outside the college yelling at him saying, "You're not using our pronouns, you're the Antichrist." So there was all of that. And then at the same time, I was listening to a lot of these like lo-fi videos, like people mixing lo-fi with the Simpsons and stuff like that on
Huh.
YouTube. So I was just listening to a lot of like lo-fi wavified Simpsons little cutscenes that people were editing up. And I saw one with like Bart Simpson skateboarding on the sidewalk, and it turns out that was my first experience of seeing Akira the Dawn on YouTube. So, long story short, the 12 Rules for Life pretty much changed my life. I got the book, I joined Akira's Discord, met a bunch of great people. I joined the book club that one of the guys in there was starting. I eventually became the center of the book club. We said like, hey, we're meeting up every week to read these books by, whoever. It was a Tribe by Sebastion Junger and Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Those were the first two books that we read together. And then we're like halfway through the Marcus Aurelius meetings, we're like, why don't we record these? I'm like, yeah, I have the equipment. I have OBS and editing software on my computer. I used to attempt video content on YouTube. So figured, yeah, why not? Let's just do this. Because another reason for that would be because, not everyone could make the meetings every week. So anyone who missed a week would be like, oh, what did the guys chat about last week? I'm like, oh, it's on YouTube. Haven't missed anything. Perfect. And we just keep going. And then, people dropped off. people started taking the book club more seriously, and those of us that did started getting like better microphones. We got webcams, and we started the official Bookwave podcast. We got a website. My buddy Will, who I knew personally, I brought him on. Like, he wasn't like he didn't come to the Discord through the like Akira the Dawn's music. He came through the Discord through me, so we could like continue through the book club, and that's when it became like its own whole entity where we started doing our own thing. And then I think the first video of yours that I saw was when another one of the people from the Akira Discord posted one of their conversations with you. So a lot of people, or you talk about how a lot of people don't watch all of the conversation videos, but those ones are my favorite. Right after the Words of Fudge series, I don't know. So I think the perspective of everyone like having these conversations and able to cross this line in the sand, like that perspective is the most valuable thing we can have right now. And I picked up a lot, not just from you interacting with these people, but like all of their responses and how they're all dealing with these same questions. It's been really eye-opening. So thanks again for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, no, wow. There's a lot there. Tell me more about, I haven't had a conversation with Akira. I should probably pursue that. He's been on Rebel Wisdom. He's been on a few videos. I've enjoyed some of his, what about Akira drew you? And yeah, let's start there.
It wasn't necessarily Akira himself. Like at the start, obviously that's what it was. Cause like, well, I like lo-fi music. I'm a musician, so music has always been a huge part of my life. And at the same time as like getting into Jordan Peterson and really starting to clean up my room, and standing up straight. But like Akira's community, like in that Discord, was added so much more to it. And like, it's what Vervaeke talks about when it's like, you can perceive the music and you can, it's perspective knowledge when you're watching the videos and listening to the wave music, but it's participatory when you can actually jump into the community of everyone else having the same experience and having the conversation with them. So, and then of course the book club on top of that, and that's just been evolving since the start. So
It's, boy, that's a really important point. It's because I'm trying to get my head around the Discord, the Bridges of Meaning Discord server, which is it's my introduction into Discord servers. I'm not much of a gamer, and I didn't know what Discord was. And a bunch of the guys from the local meetup said, "Oh, we should start a Discord server." And then the second attempt, it took off. And so I've been trying to see, okay, what can be had in this? What part does this play? And so, boy, that's really good in terms of its participatory. Well, flesh out for me a little bit more how that plays out in your life. I mean, in your relationships. I mean, you mentioned, a romantic relationship that went sideways, and then, it's interesting to me how the Discord server then eventually evolved into the book club, and the book club is also mediated by, these screens. What, but now when you introduce a book into that, you've now got another entity in a sense coming in, whether it's Sebastion Junger or Marcus Aurelius, or now you're doing some time travel, because if your initial Tower of Babel image holds, I mean, not only are we having the challenges to connecting this way via words is significant. That gets multiplied when you're talking to a Roman emperor who's been dead almost 2,000 years.
Yeah, well, pretty much everything that I've just blurted out to you in that little intro has been culminating in my head ever since the start of this podcast, or ever since I joined the ever since I joined the Discord. But hmm, I would say like it's a lot like we usually have like the same group of guys when we do our get together, but when we have an extra element like the book come in and we can talk about stuff like time travel and like going back, what did Nietzsche think about this? Like after you read Beyond Good and Evil, everything else you read after that factors into Beyond Good and Evil. So it's not just like me, Pat, Jason, and Will. It's also, Marcus Aurelius over here, Frederick Nietzsche over here, Ayn Rand up here. Like after we read Atlas Shrugged, every video afterwards, we've somehow been able to reference objectivism, whether we're poking holes in it or just strengthening some of those ideas. Like, I'm not an objectivist by any means, but I think she had a lot of holes in her theory. But she definitely had a lot of good ideas too. Like,
Hmm.
she drew a lot from Aristotle, and what would we have without Aristotle?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's really helpful because I mean, what you're laying down is you're putting down the layers, and
Mhm.
it's just fascinating to me how these new media are reconstructing you and your community, and by you know further out into the culture and beyond. I mean, this is a I mean, what you're laying out for me, these are profound transformations in your life,
Mhm.
because probably 5 years ago, if I would have told you, yeah, you're going to be reading world class books and digging in.
This, the Holy Bible.
Yeah, the Holy Bible. You're gonna be reading the most important books of human civilization, and processing them with others on the internet, and this is going to be profoundly meaningful for you and a group of friends. Well, let me ask you this question. What's the last thing, degree or grade, you completed in formal education?
Well, I went to college for like a welding course, but afterwards some like medical conditions came up, so
Okay.
some some issues there with staying consistently employed, let's say.
Okay.
But
But
that that's a
you're
lot of,
getting a world-class education for
yeah.
the price of an ISP connection.
Yeah, and like nearly any it wouldn't be anything close to what I'm experiencing without, you know, the other three or four guys that I meet up with once a week to say, "Hey, what did you think about this line?" And they all have a different answer. Like there's nothing more valuable than that kind of perspective. You can just break down those differences for an hour and a half and not run out of things to talk about.
This is fascinating. This is fascinating.
But at the same time, I almost feel like I'm an outsider looking in. Like I can't identify myself as a Christian because I honestly just don't believe the same things that, any Christian has said they believe. But I can still take all the knowledge from the Bible and say, hey, this is worth considering, guys. And when people say it's just a story, that's the biggest oxymoron I can think of. Like when I talk about people, when I talk to people that say like, "Oh, the Bible is just a story," I'm like, "Where would you be without story?" Like we sit here and talk about Star Wars for hours and hours and hours all the time. We debate little factoids about, who's faster between Superman and the Flash, and we use, whatever little bits of information we can find. Like, you know, Christians are doing the same thing with their Bible, and they're taking it a lot more seriously than we are, talking about Batman.
Yeah. Well, and when you ask the question, what do you mean by taking it more seriously? I mean, that's because it comes down to, in many ways, there's a guy, the Richard Reif, who is an interesting character. He comes up more and more in sort of reactionary circles. And one of his definitions is you don't take anything, it's not really his definition, I'm adapting it, but you don't take anything seriously until you have to say no, a hard no to something in the world, or maybe even something in yourself. I mean, that's sort of the definition of taking something seriously. I mean, part of taking something seriously is you're noshing down in a really serious way with your friends on really serious books, and enjoying the meaning of working through this hard stuff. That's one level of seriousness, but another level of seriousness is the hard no to something that you really want. I mean, that's to a degree where the real serious stuff begins, the real sacrificial stuff. So I'm just, I mean, this is also because I know you've messaged me a bunch of times, and on the surface of it, the degree to which you colonize someone is the degree to which you actually move their calendar in the world, because right now there are more videos than you and I have in our biological frame to consume. And the attention frame is less than that. And I mean, these frames get smaller and smaller and smaller, which is why communication is so very difficult. But, you know, I'm just tremendously impressed. And I don't know the better word for it, to just sort of take in the vision that in just a few words you've laid out in front of me this morning. It's deeply fascinating to me.
Well, it took me a while to get here too, so.
and it makes me want to know, well, maybe I should maybe I should ask to be invited onto your podcast sometime with a bunch of the rest of you.
I was going to save that for the very end. I was going to invite you on to the Bookwave podcast. I've already discussed that with the rest of the lads.
I think I'm going to have to do that, because let me offer this perspective. The United States spends billions of dollars trying to achieve, and almost always failing. Well, that's a whole nother realm, because there's a lot of fudginess in that. What you all have done with each other, building up no student debt.
Yeah.
That's kind of a crazy thought, isn't it?
I have a little bit of student debt, but none of it's from, philosophy or theology or.
and how much did you learn acquiring that student debt versus how much have you learned with you and your friends doing this out of pure joy?
Like I went to college for welding, so it was pretty much all review from high school for me. Like I had a pretty cool welding class in high school. My welding teacher was making fun of me for a little bit because I broke a record for how many welding/machine shop credits someone was able to graduate with. That was only because I stayed for like a victory lap because I needed extra credits for what I wanted. But, what did that all amount to? In high school, they wouldn't let me take philosophy because my grades weren't high enough. So here I am talking about philosophy on YouTube.
Wow. This is deeply fascinating. And you're making me, do you know who Julian is?
Not offhand, no.
Oh, he's another. I mean, I assume that's Toronto Blue Jays, and I see the flag behind you, and I see I am Canadian. So where do you live in
Yeah.
Canada?
A little town called Huntsville in central Ontario.
Central Ontario.
I'm on Toronto time, but
Okay. Okay. Well,
we
you
call it
will.
Toronto time, you call it New York time, so whatever works.
You should connect up with Julian, who's a Hutterite, and I think he's in Manitoba.
Hmm.
Who spends his days welding too, but spends his time reading philosophy. You should definitely have Julian on your podcast. And he has a blog about Kierkegaard, and he was one of the first people. He was so Julian just I started making videos, and Julian just contacted me and says, I want to talk to you. And by that point, I'd had a few conversations that I started recording them. So his was one of the first conversations that I recorded and shared on the channel. And Julian to me was a revelation. And so he spends his day welding dumpsters, but reading philosophy and talking about it with his friends. And so I, I'm I'm just deeply fascinated in this because, well, I'm also rather fascinated in terms of where is this going for you? Because,
Hmm.
right now it's colonizing your brain, but it's going to manifest itself in the rest of your life.
Yeah, I don't really have a good answer to that question specifically yet, but
No, you don't, and you can't. I don't
when we
expect you to answer it. And even
yeah,
if you
but
did, you'd be wrong.
you're right. I'll try my best though. But whenever we talk about, you know, having our own framework, right, as an operating system, and I'm taking a look at all of these frameworks, I got the Bible, I got the Quran up here, I got a bookshelf full of old literature and world religions. I'm trying to build a frame out of all of these frames that don't really fit how I see the world.
Right.
Like in a way that I'm not sure how to really articulate it, but any reason that someone would have for wanting to, leave a religion, like say they want to leave the church, they don't want to be Christian anymore. That's kind of analogous to the impulse that I'm having right now in my little spot of atheism.
Hmm.
Because I know that when I look at other people who use the word atheist, I don't have anything in common with these people. Like they're more worried about saying, God in the Bible says pi is 3. So your God's pretty bad at math, eh? Like, come on, man. It's a useless conversation to have.
Wow. You just improved upon, I can't tell you how many hours of silly atheist Christian debates on the internet that I've heard.
Yeah.
You just laid it right there.
Like
That was
I've
that
listened to a lot of them because like this is the framework that I've been using, and listening to your videos and listening to Jordan Peterson, it's like, okay, this piece of the frame that's broken. I have to replace that. Slide that in, see how that works. Well, like I still have a soft spot for Sam Harris, even though he says a bunch of things I don't agree with, because like if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have gotten into like taking meditation really seriously. That's how I got into that.
okay.
So it wasn't just, oh, I'm gonna listen to all these guys making fun of Christians because, I don't like what Christians have to say. It was more like, no, Sam Harris, more than, Dawkins and a few others, have a certain respect for this sense of spirituality or whatever you want to call it, the transcendent,
Hmm.
but he doesn't articulate it very well. He's just like, well, it's all consciousness. Yeah, but can't we have a conversation about that? Nope, it's just all consciousness. That's the mystery. I'm like, okay, you have all the answers, I see. I still have questions. So that's how I live my life.
Wow. That was really good too. I'm glad you have a podcast. I'm gonna have to listen. That's really good. That was a really good riff. Well, and Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, that's so fascinating. I listened recently, Sisyphus, there's this YouTube channel, Sisyphus something or other. He's been putting out these little 20, 30-minute videos. He had one on Jordan Peterson, he had one on Sam Harris, and they're really good little videos. And it's their little biography is so important to me because I don't know, biography is sort of a way to sort of get up to speed on another individual. And there's a little biography of Sam Harris, and I found it very helpful in exactly the way that that little riff you had was helpful for me, and a little bit more appreciation for Sam Harris, both in terms of why he attracted the audience he did, but also probably why he's losing the audience he's losing right now, and how Jordan Peterson sort of fit into that. And Peterson, gosh, it's so interesting. See, this is why I have Randos conversation, because I don't trust my salience hierarchy enough to, you said it very well, patience, empathy, emotional control. That's what you need to have a conversation. Oh, this has been a revelation for me. This is really good. Now I'm all conflicted because I have all these really good conversations in the can and I want to publish them at once, but the channel can't take that. So, but I definitely look forward to publishing this thing because
Maybe
I think you are.
maybe we can figure out so you can send this recording to me and then we can both publish it.
I'll send it to you. You can publish it. I'll send it after I've got a conversation at 11, but I'm definitely going to want to go on your podcast. I'm definitely going to want to hear what the other people have to say, because I think the question of this new medium, the internet, and it's really a media because it's multiple mediums, and the way that this is reshaping our world and reshaping our consciousness, we're just at the beginning of that. And as people have often noted, the invention of the printing press seriously disrupted Northern Europe, to say the least. The internet is going to seriously disrupt the entire world. And, you know, your little story here of your little group is a hopeful story in a lot of different ways, but it's a very different story than what you'll hear from, let's say, Brett Weinstein or certain. It gets into both part of Jordan. The first video that the second video that Jordan Peterson colonized me with was a piece of a Harvard visit he had where he talked about great books. Because Peterson rightly noted there are reasons these books are great. And no matter how much dismissal based on some arrogance based on other people's technology, these books have a value that we are not quite in touch with. And you can see part of this, you can bear the witness to this value are the ripples that they leave in human civilization, and you guys are manifesting that.
Yeah, and that reminds me a lot about, you know, a fellow Canadian philosopher, Marshall McLuhan, who coined the phrase, the medium is the message, right? So you could say like a book, a podcast, a video, or a television program, all about the same thing, all about religion, are all going to be interpreted differently.
Yeah.
Because you can read a book and say, wow, that was really profound, and then mention it to one of your friends. Or you could watch a video about it, join a Discord, have hours upon hours of conversation with other random people you meet online who came across the same piece of information and really want to get to the bottom of it. So, in a way, we're making media a lot more participatory, with the interaction of like just the comments section, having a Twitter account, and having a Discord where you can have these online forums to have these really deep conversations where we really couldn't before. Like, we're still limited, obviously. There's a screen between us. It'd be a lot better if we were in person having this conversation. And a lot gets lost when you're just typing to one another over a Discord chat. But I think there is progress being made. We just have to be weary of the limitations of the technology as much as the gifts that it gives us.
Yeah. I completely agree. That's very well said. Where do you want to see this go for you and your little tribe?
Don't really know.
Yeah.
Just carving out the path one
Yeah.
footstep at a time.
Yeah. Has it now, where geographically are many of your conversation partners?
Well, there's 2 of us in Ontario and there's 2 in Texas. So we're split down the middle between America and Canada.
How go ahead. How
back-
big of a listenership do you have? How many subs on?
We have 55 subscribers on YouTube, so not that many yet.
God bless you. I hope at the end of, after I post this, you will have more.
And anybody who wants to get a hold of me and have a conversation on our podcast, that possibility is open to us. I'm always in the Akira Discord. I'm one of the moderators in there, so
Okay. I'll have to, I don't know if I'll have to
I'm
jump
also
onto the Akira Discord. I haven't been there at all. Well, let me ask you this question, just from a personal, very selfish mode. To what degree is Akira himself, how does he participate on the Discord?
he's not very much in the Discord, but like he does streams every night and every morning on Twitch and YouTube.
Yeah, that's
So
a lot.
It's not that he doesn't participate with the community. He's always participating every day, twice a day. Every morning, he's on Twitch. Every evening, he's on YouTube. So, if you're ever lonesome, come hang out with us. Meaning Wave exists.
So, well, let's talk a little bit about, I mean, if you're ever lonesome, I mean, you said it that way. That's interesting. And because one of the, I mean, before YouTube and all this stuff, I was a member of a listserv. Do you know what a listserv is?
No.
Wow. Now I'm old. A listserv, back in the day when the internet meant email, a listserv was the way that you could create a community over email. And what that was is you would send your email to a particular email address, which was basically a repeater. So you'd send your email to this repeater and it would send it to 100 people, and they would send the response to the repeater and it would get sent. And what you would do in that way is you would create a community via email. And this was a community around my denomination, the Christian Reformed Church, and just conversations and discussions. And the nice thing about email, as opposed to say Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, is that email was heavily text, and you could write, I mean, just like with every medium, you had to figure out, 3-4 paragraphs might be what that community would bear. If you went 4 or 5 pages, and nobody would read it. If you went just a few lines, you'd have to be very clever. But via email and a listserv, you could create a community. And I continue to participate in that community to this day, although I don't have as much time to. Sometimes people ask me, what were you doing before YouTube? I mean, besides pastoring and being a father and all of those layers, but what were you doing to do all of your processing? I was processing and learning and growing via email, because I would type out and people would type responses, but it was in many ways a slower, more textual medium than what you're doing. And what you're doing, well, it's also deeply fascinating that what you're doing came out of this weird, I shouldn't say weird, but it's very strange to me and new to me, mean, when I listen to some, I haven't listened to Akira that much, but I always kind of looked at it like, this is cool. I kind of like it, but I'm not sure I know what I'm looking at. I can hear it, but what does this mean? And so it's interesting that a Discord would, it's almost like you need something around which a community forms, and that community will in some ways manifest something about what it forms around. And now that community is growing new arms and legs, which are doing different things from that community, but also reaching out and connecting to other communities. So stuff is happening here that we don't understand, but we're doing it.
We're all nodes in a network, as Jordan Peterson would say. And all these nodes are firing on all cylinders.
They are. Well, let me ask you this question. How long have you been doing your Bookwave now?
A couple of years. I think it was February of 2018 is when we started officially.
What have you learned about what it takes to have a meaningful discussion about a hard book?
Oof. Well, hard books are some of our favorites. So we haven't released this one yet, but we just recorded a video of our review of Uncle Tom's Cabin. So that book, that is, as I said in the video, unenjoyable by design. So, I tried to focus on like the whole comparison of when Jordan Peterson talks about, picturing yourself as, an SS guard or a Nazi or like the worst horrible thing you could imagine. Like, imagine just putting yourself in the position of like a slave owner or a slave. Either one, it's bad news bears all around.
Yeah.
Like, even to make like tiny little comparisons, it feels dirty, right? Like, well, these people, they thought of other people as property, and the other guy, Jason in our group, made the comparison, well, like, yeah, they're property in their eyes. So if your car starts driving away on its own, maybe that's their perspective. I'm like, oof, those are hard. That's a hard perspective to try to get behind. And when trying to make that comparison with Uncle Tom's Cabin or Crime and Punishment, starting to read the Bible, it's not that hard. Like, yeah, I could see myself in a world where everyone is, sacrificing their children to this god Molech or whatever.
Yeah.
Because they think that's going to bring them salvation. And then when, Yahweh comes along and says, you don't have to sacrifice them. That was the first time that happened. Like, that was the first time someone said, it's okay if I don't sacrifice my kid. And, that's a big thing that atheists don't understand too. Like, the binding of Isaac isn't just a story of, oh, this guy in the 21st century deciding, oh, God wants me to sacrifice my kid, I better sacrifice my kid. No, it was the norm that they were sacrificing their children. All of them. Every firstborn gets sacrificed to this deity. Then all of a sudden, God of the Bible is real or not. It's profound beyond words to say that someone came along and said, this isn't the answer. We're not doing this anymore. All right. So,
well, and it's not just when you look at cheap contemporary propaganda, it doesn't take seriously. Something had to displace child sacrifice, because child sacrifice functioned for a reason. And that we can't see, because to us, child sacrifice, there is no reason for it. But that's witness to the displacement. And what we can't see is the displacement. And we can't see before the displacement what the need for child sacrifice was. Now, you will still find in the news stories which horrify us about some parent brutalizing their child, and Child Protective Services comes and takes the child out of the home. I mean, that happens today. And we look upon that abusive parent as an abnormality. And what that abnormality bears witness to is that what we are is this distributed organism. That's what we really are. And the fact that the evidence for us being a distributed organism is the fact that though we communicate badly, we sort of still make it work. And so when there's a child that is being sacrificed by a mother or a father or a step parent, we don't understand that transaction in the way those transactions used to be universal. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, but I'm sure it'll make more sense the second time I hear it. It usually does.
But your point is deeply profound. And I'm just blown away at what you guys are doing and how you got here. And I want to see way, way more people doing what you're doing. And the thing is, I know they are, because I know it's happening, but you guys have sort of found a way to do it together. And I'm, I live in this weird space where on one hand, I really feel the need to continue to remind people on the Discord and who listen to my channel that the two-dimensionality of our conversations is a serious limitation and defect, and that in order for these conversations to finally yield the fruitful meaning we long for, it has to get out of the screen and into three-dimensionality and into time and into matter and into all of these things. But at the same time, when I have a conversation like this right now, I am tremendously impressed by what has been accomplished via even thin clients like Discord servers and YouTube. That I'm profoundly impressed by that right now.
Yeah, like one of the names that Akira had for his Discord for the longest time was the Church of Meaning. And that's you can't really say it much better than that, but it's had a couple names along the timeline. Meaning Wave Autonomous Zone. Gets kind of silly with it, but the Church of Meaning, I think there's really something to that, because it'll never be like a temple that we all assemble in and all sing hymns together, but it's a place where people can get together and play a couple games of Among Us or have a chat about the Bible or anything. Lots of people debate politics in there too, so that's always in the zeitgeist. So people are always, it doesn't matter who's the president, prime minister, people are going to be talking about politics.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we are out of time, lamentably,
Yep.
but you already know how to send me messages, and send me a message, and let's calendar a time to I'd love to be on your podcast.
Absolutely.
And I'm definitely going to, your podcast has definitely risen up my salience hierarchy. I'm definitely going to take a look at it, because
Yeah, I've gone from some guy pestering you on Discord to an actual face now.
That's right. Well, that's an important process to understand, because
Yes.
you're more real to me because I see you in a context. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there trying to colonize me, for better or for worse, but you've done a good job this morning in a very short amount of time. So congratulations.
Yeah. My goal was to be a little bit more clear with what I was trying to say than Stephen Woodford or Jonathan Peugeot when they were interacting with each other.
Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. And wow, I'm excited. I'm excited to share this video. I have another conversation coming up almost right away, but I will upload this to YouTube unlisted and send you the link, and you can, feel free to publish it however or whenever you want to. Right away if you want to, that's absolutely fine. And I will
Perfect.
post this on my channel coming up in the next few days. But wow, I'm, good for you. Good for you. You're doing important stuff, and I want to encourage you and cheer you on, because I'm really excited about your project. So keep at it.
Thanks. I mean, that means a lot, man.
All right. Well, I wish we had more time right now, but that's sort of the nature of this thing. But yeah, send me a link and send me a note and we'll find a time to schedule something. It'll probably have to be in January for me, because the season is upon us. And
Yep.
but I very much want to meet with the rest of your guys, and I will check out some of your videos before then.
Yeah. Take care.
All
And
right.
to say it in my own language, may the force be with you.
All right. I receive that.